Hey guys, I'm Adam Christodoulou, official Mercedes-AMG GT3 race driver. You are listening to the GT Report podcast.
Welcome to the very first episode of the GT Report podcast. I am Miguel, and this week Joe will talk with Angus Fender about his upcoming season in Brit's GT with 2Cs Motorsport and the challenges that lay ahead of him as he enters his first season as a full-time GT3 driver. But first let's talk about the team that has been making waves at the VLN Nürburgring Endurance Series. Just 3 months ago this team didn't even exist and might not even have been an idea in the mind of its founder. And now here it is, a 2-time race winner at the Nordschleife. It has a factory program lined up for the 24 hours of the Nürburgring and will compete in this year's GT World Challenge. Of course, I'm talking about Haupt Racing Team, the team that has not only taken over the personnel, drivers and factory program from Black Falcon, but is also continuing on the success that has made Black Falcon such a popular team. With second place in the first VLN race, an undisputed victory in the second and a professional win after the disqualification of the Octane 126 Ferrari in the third race, the momentum going into the 24 hours of the Nürburgring in September is with Haupt Racing Team. Playing his part in the success at the recent VLN doubleheader is Adam Christodoulou. Let's give him a call. Welcome Adam, thank you for being our very first guest to the podcast. It's really exciting, isn't it?
Well, thank you for having me. No, it's good to catch up. It's been a long time. Of course, normally we get to speak to each other almost every other weekend or every few weekends at the racetrack. But I suppose with the current situation, there's been a big pause in everyone's year. So it's always nice catching up.
Yeah,
sure.
Likewise. So you started a couple of weeks ago at the Nürburgring with your season, and it was a big success, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's a dream start. Like in the end, honestly, I was just praying that I was going to be able to get there. So I was happy to make it across the border. So yeah, it was a bit of a drive from where I've been isolating, I suppose, or staying safe in the UK. So it's 4 hours down to the tunnel. It was an hour across on the tunnel, and then actually it was 4 hours from the tunnel to the Nürburgring. And once I was on the other side of the train, I knew I was good to get all the way to the track. And so it was great being back at the racetrack. It feels like it's been far too long. Like last time I raced was November. And so this has definitely been the longest period of being out the car. And honestly, I was quite amazed that by the Monday morning, I felt like I'd been beaten up. So I felt like I could feel my neck, I could feel my back, I could feel my legs. And I wasn't even in the car that long. But I think it's just, I'm amazed at how out of practice I felt physically at the track. But in the end, like the result outweighed any aching or anything, because I suppose to walk away from the NLS's first ever doubleheader with 2 wins, you can't ask for a better result than that. So, quite a dream start. A late, that's great, start to the season. So, I've never had to wait until July to do my first race. But no, I was just super happy. It's my first time racing with the HRT boys, the Haupt Racing Team. A lot of the guys and experience has come from Black Falcon. Black Falcon decided to stop with GT3 racing this season, and so Hubert Haupt has decided to set up his own team, and we've got all the experienced guys that have made Black Falcon so successful in GT racing with us. And so even though we're classed as a new team, we've come with a lot of experience, and that obviously showed in the first 2 races of the NLS, formerly known as the VLN Championship. So it was nice to hit the ground running, blow the cobwebs off, and to see all the guys and celebrate again. It's been a long time. The closest I've had to that is on the simulator. Even though simulators are getting closer and closer, it still doesn't compare. Like to having the G-forces and smelling the fuel and the tires and the heat of the engine and everything, nothing beats all of that.
Björn Groosman in the Octane 126 Ferrari, he came at you really, really fast there at the final stint.
It was incredible. Like last weekend, the Ferrari boys were super fast, and as much as it kills me to say that, he was quicker than me. And so it was one of those that, of course, I felt like I tripped over the traffic a little bit on the first 2 laps, and what I thought was actually I struggled with some of the other cars' driving standards. And I don't know whether that was just me being a little bit cautious with it being our first weekend, or whether it's just everyone being a little bit rusty. I found that even though we normally race with more cars, I felt that traffic seemed to not flow as well as it has in the past. But of course, I suppose it's the same for everyone. For most people, the VLN in July might have been the first race that they've done this year. So the last time they were in the car, the last VLN last year was October. So they haven't raced for 8 months, 9 months. And so I think a few people were just a little cautious, not using all the track and staying in the middle of the track a little bit. And it just made it a bit harder to predict where some of the smaller, slower cars were going to go. So I felt like I just tripped over a little bit on the first 2 laps. And then when the Ferrari got past, he got past in between Flugplatz and Arenberg. There's a straight there just before you go over the bridge. And basically a little car indicated. And I was like, right, I'll go down his inside. And then he came back towards the curve. And so I had to brake, and then after I went past, the Ferrari just sailed past me on the straight, which was frustrating. But anyway, in the end, he pulled a bit of a gap on the next lap or 2, and then I reeled him in on the last lap, and I think in the end, I think the distance was 6 tenths or 8 tenths across the line, which is super close, super frustrating, because of course, when you know you're so close, but you haven't quite made it, it's a little tough to swallow. But in the end, obviously, later on, I was on the way back to the UK. In fact, just as I came off the tunnel, just as I got back to the UK, I had a phone call to say that apparently the Ferrari had a tyre that wasn't an illegal tyre, and so and that we'd been declared winners of the race. So that was a real shock. Even though I preferred to do it on the racetrack, it was nice, I suppose, to end up with the double win. I ended up, I had a bit of a drama with the train. Of course, trains are a little bit, they're not as often as they normally are, and from doing all the debriefs, obviously it was a longer weekend than normal. We ended up doing longer debriefs about the weekend, and we did our engineering debriefs, sat down with the guys from AMG and also our team. I knew I was going to be pushing my luck, and I missed my train by about half an hour, but I was told, it doesn't matter because you can just get on the next train. As long as you're there within 2 hours, you can get on the next train. So I arrived at 9:50. My train was at 9:20. So I was like, okay, well, I'll get the 10:21. And I'd already checked on the way that was available. So yeah, okay, that's all good. And I get there, and on the gate, it's like, train unavailable. I was like, what? So of course I pressed the information button, and the guy came on the tunnel, and he was like, yeah, I'm just looking. The next train you can get is 1:20. I'm like, what? In 4 hours' time? I was like, no, there's a mistake. I was like, look, there's a train at 10:20. It's full. Are you kidding me? I was like, well, how about if I play Flexi Plus? Can I get on it? He was like, hold on. So he's like, here, go to gate 1. So I ended up going out to gate 1. I spoke to the guy, and I was like, yeah, I want to buy Flexi Plus. And they were like, yeah, it's 350 euros. I was like, what? I was like, hold on, that's more than a return. They're like, yeah, that's internet prices. I was like, you're kidding me. I was thinking, do I really want to get home that 4 hours early? Of course I wanted to, but at the same time I couldn't bring myself to paying that money because I felt like it was a waste of money. So I was like, okay, stuff it. So I was like, I'll just have my normal, whatever train I can have. So of course he printed the ticket, and I was like, when's that for? And he's like, the same time as my colleague told you. And I was like, oh, thank you very much, mate. He had no interest. So anyway, so I was like, stuff it. I was like, well, I'll go and get some dinner from the Eurotunnel. Of course, I got there and the whole place was closed because it was just after 9 o'clock. And so I was like, great, now what am I going to do? So my plan was, well, stuff it. I'll do my reports on my laptop, and then maybe I'll have a nap, and then I'll get the train later on. Anyway, there was a woman wandering around saying, right, anyone on train K can go to the thing, so they all left. And I said to her, I was like, look, if there's any gaps on any of the earlier trains, can we go on it? And she was like, no, not unless I say so. I was like, here we go. So anyway, so then she was like, anyone on train L, you can go. And there was quite a few cars went. So at that point I thought, stuff it, so I went with them, even though I was on train M. So I was meant to be the train after. So in the end, the guy at the roundabout was talking with someone else that was trying to come in from the other direction, and so I managed to get on the earlier train, the train that I planned on getting. So I managed to get on the 10:20 train. So I felt like I had a little win there. So that was good. And then, like I said, when I came off the train, I was just thinking, right, there's no more security or anything, and they were just waving everyone past. And I got on the train, and by the time I got to the UK, I had the message to say that the Ferrari had been disqualified. So maybe I should have bought a lottery ticket, because I felt like I had a little win with the train and a little win or victory with the news that we'd won race 2, NLS 3 even. So maybe it would have been a good time to buy a lottery ticket, but I missed that opportunity. I think it's too late now. But yeah, in the end, brilliant weekend. Couldn't complain at all. It was great to see everyone at the racetrack again, and it was great to see what the Nürburgring had put in place to allow us all to race, because I don't know if people haven't seen it. Basically, the pit lane is 3 times longer than it normally is.
When did you know that you would be racing with Haupt Racing? Was that before or after you knew that Black Falcon would call it quits?
So it's something that I suppose, unfortunately, with how the pandemic ended up, of course, a lot of teams just about survive through the winter, because obviously a lot of racing is during the summer, and that's how they budget. And of course, a lot of teams struggle, and then of course you're just getting through the winter, things are just about to start, and then suddenly it all stops. And I think sadly it might not just have been Black Falcon which decided to stop with the GT3 program. Like, I know, I can imagine there's a lot of teams that have had to close the shop doors and have struggled. And so we found out just over halfway through that we were informed that there was another plan in place straight away. So obviously Sean Paul and Hubert had been discussing this to try and figure out if there's a solution, and thankfully they had one. And so I know that we're still running out of the old building, but I think he's got some plans to set up a new workshop and to try and improve what was already a great team in the past. Like, Black Falcon, thankfully, is still running. They're still running their Cup car program and their GT4 program and their smaller cars at the Nürburgring and in other championships, which is great to see. And obviously, I still went and said hi to all the guys that were there the weekend, all the guys and girls. And so, yeah, it's sad, because I suppose I've been a member of Black Falcon since 2013, but we're all continuing to race together, just with a different team owner and under some new branding. And so we'll see, I suppose, where the future takes us. I think at the end they've still got all the best guys working for them, and so I'm sure they'll be as successful as they were when they were branded as Black Falcon.
Was that transition, was that as seamless as it looks to have been?
For me as a driver, yes, but I can only imagine for all the guys and girls working in the background, it's been a bit of a headache, maybe. I don't know, like, I'm in a very, I suppose, fortunate position that I get told by AMG and by the team usually when to turn up and when to drive, and of course they do all the other logistics and engineering and coordinating between themselves. And so, okay, it's taken me a little bit of time to get used to calling it a different team name. Just because it's still all the same guys, but yeah, as a driver, it wasn't too much of a difference, but I'm sure there's been a lot of hard work of putting all of this together in the background, which I suppose has gone over my head a little bit. But in the end, it was their second race weekend, and even the first weekend that they raced during the NLS 1, they won on track, but sadly they picked up a penalty in the pit lane, which cost them the win, but they still finished second. But so far they've had 3 out of 3 podiums, with 2 of them being wins, so they're not doing too bad.
Yeah, it's quite an impressive performance so far, and if you look at the past of those people when they were with Black Falcon, it looks very promising for the future. And maybe with a guy like Hubert Haupt at the helm of the team, he's very passionate about racing. Obviously, he's a businessman, so I don't know how things are with sponsorships, but that seems like a financially at least a solid basis. So future looks bright for the team, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Like Hubert, obviously an incredibly successful businessman, does has a real job in other areas, but he's also been involved in motorsport for many years, and he knows exactly what is needed for a team to run. And he's been involved with Black Falcon and other teams in the past, and he knows what he likes and what is good for the team. And I think he's going to implement all of that and do as best as he can to make sure that we continue on the success from Black Falcon and make it the most successful team in GT3 racing possible. And like you said, I think we've got the perfect base to start from, and we're going to do everything we can to continue setting the benchmark and being as successful as possible. So this is just the start, I think, of something that's going to be pretty great.
You were also supposed to race in Chinese GT this season. What's going on there now for you?
So this, unfortunately, I think it's going to be a bit more of a challenge. I can't drive there, so I can't get on the tunnel and drive across the world suddenly to get there. So, of course, to get to China, you got to make sure you have all the right visas and everything. But right now, the borders are closed still for a lot of the world to get into China. And so, of course, this is causing, sadly, a bit of a worry that the first round was due to start at the end of June. But that had to be postponed because there was a second outbreak in Beijing. And so they postponed it a month. So that's meant to start in 2 weeks. And unfortunately, unless something changes this week, I think I'm going to be missing round one, which is a real shame to, I suppose, be on the back foot. But Eric, we've already spoke about other drivers, other teammates. And so I think I'll have a Chinese teammate joining him for round one at least. And then the next race isn't for another month. So hopefully I'll be able to be reunited with the team to join them for round two of the rest of the championship. What they have done though, now they've turned it into a super season. So it's not going to be the 2020 championship. It's going to be the 2020 to 2021 championship. So it's going to be a year and a half of championship, which is great. So and there's been some huge changes in Toro Racing. I've raced with the team now for 2 years, and originally we ran under or with another team, and then Eric last year was like, this isn't working. I wanted to be ran my way, so we went to a one-car team last year, and things have ramped up extremely quickly. So I've got in a few key people that I've been lucky enough to work with in the past, and Eric trusts me with my recommendations, and so actually we're going from a one-car team to a five-car team, and we're going to be running two GT4s, two BMW GT4s, which wouldn't have been my first choice, but it's what the customer wanted. So we've got two GT4 BMWs, and then we're going to be running actually three AMG GT3s in the GT3 championship as well. So we've got a lot of new people getting involved. We've expanded the team. We've got a lot of new equipment and stuff. Some real important key people, engineers and team managers involved, and number one mechanics and number two mechanics. And we're able to have had quite a bit of involvement in, I suppose, being lucky enough to be involved with, I suppose, the development and the growth of this team. And so from the success last year, that's why we've ended up with, I suppose, so many extra customers. And it sounds like a lot, and I suppose it is, but with it running in two championships, I believe that with the people we have, it's going to be possible to manage it all, no problem.
And you'll be back in China as soon as you can? Yeah,
that's the plan. So I speak to Eric maybe every other week. So he's my teammate, but also the team owner. And again, like he's got a normal job, a real job in the real world. Like in racing, we're just playing basically with race cars. So he's got a real job in the real world, and so this is why I suppose he's listened, and we've been able to get these important people involved that's going to make this team hopefully the most successful team in China. This is our goal. I think if we'd completed all the rounds last year, we would have had a chance of winning the championship. We ended up top Mercedes, and I think this year now with the extra cars, that's going to help for the team championship. It's going to help our learning with the development of the new car, the 2020 AMG GT3, because there's a few little differences between last year's model and this year's model with aerodynamics and the brakes and the cooling and stuff. So we'll hopefully be able to unlock the potential of that and continue winning over there. The last race I did over there, we managed to win. So hopefully the team can start off with the same success at round one in 2 weeks' time.
How has the pandemic affected you as a race car driver and an instructor?
Oh, it's been really strange. Like usually at times I've been in a position where I've been at 6 different tracks over 7 days, and to go from this flat out fast pace of life to suddenly when it first started and basically being at home every day. It was quite strange. Maybe this is why Lydia agreed to me getting the simulator. Maybe I was getting on her. So maybe she wanted some peace and quiet. So I got a sim and I was in a different room. Maybe this is what helped. I don't know. But no, it's been really bizarre. Honestly, but I suppose everyone's been in the same boat, especially in the UK. I think we were hit pretty hard with the lockdown restrictions, but in the end it was what we needed to do to keep the country safe, and every country is doing what they believe is best. At the end of the day, no one's been in this situation before, so we're all trying to learn and understand each country is trying to understand how to keep everyone safe. And so instructing, you're not allowed to do in-car instructing at the moment, which is a lot of what I do, because I've got 2 road-registered track day cars. I've got 2 Clios with dual control, so I've got a brake pedal and clutch pedal in the passenger side. And I do a lot of coaching one-on-one in these cars, and of course, this all had to stop. And then there was no testing in the UK. All the tracks had to close down in the UK for a period. Things have opened up since the start of this month, the end of last month. And so things are coming alive again, but you're limited on the amount of people you're allowed at the track, the amount of people you're allowed in a team. So it's been bizarre, but things are opening up, which is a good sign. And the F1 plans on being at Silverstone next month. So hopefully once all of that has happened, then we can all go back to normal and get the ball rolling and get motor racing again.
How do you think that this pandemic is going to affect motorsports in the next 2 to 3 years? You've already mentioned that winter can be a problem for some teams, the way that they plan their budgets. And then, of course, the lockdown came. So where do you see the future of motorsports going now?
The thing is, it's not just teams that it affects, of course.
Manufacturers.
A lot of teams rely on sponsors and drivers bringing budget. Whether it's gentleman drivers that succeeded in business or generating sponsorship. And of course, right now, this is even tougher for people, because if you're in an industry where you rely on the public buying stuff, or like the retail industry or the automotive, because there's been no sales, of course, then there's no income, and then that business, and if a company has to lay off people because they can't afford to keep them, and then they still go racing, this doesn't look good. And so sadly, I think with motorsport being the most expensive sport in the world, I think unfortunately it's going to hurt the industry for at least a year or 2. And I just hope that everyone can keep their heads above the water, but I can only imagine that it's not going to be a simple task. And I suppose this year there's already manufacturers pulling out of big events like the SRO Intercontinental, where they go to Bathurst, Spa, America, South Africa, and there's another one as well. I can't
Japan.
Like Japan.
Yeah.
Like, I think that logistically, in my head, I think this is going to be impossible because of traveling restrictions. But also, if there's only a handful of people doing it, that's not a championship. And like at the end of the day, we want to race. Like if you're racing, it's always more exciting to race against 20, 30, 40 people rather than 5 or 10. So I think it's going to be tough, and people are going to, I think, make the decision to maybe just stay a little closer to home. Like, we're extremely fortunate that the Nürburgring is in Germany, and Mercedes-AMG being a German brand, I think this is what our sole attention is right now. So my program hasn't been affected, thankfully.
You are seeing with British GT now that some teams that are normally more internationally focused, they are now staying in their own country, staying in the UK.
Yeah, I think everyone's going to be racing more locally to where they live. So I think you'll find this year there'll probably be the smallest amount of European or world drivers racing in British compared to any other years, because everyone it's safer to stay at home in the same country and to travel than to have to fly, because I think there's still restrictions from America. Not that I don't believe there's any American drivers in British, but there's a few Europeans, and so if there is, hopefully not, a second outbreak, then I think everything will close down, or the borders will close down very fast again, and it might cause an issue. But it's... hold on 2 seconds.
It's a good alternative.
I think everyone's going to stay a little bit closer to home, and I suppose that makes things maybe a little bit more affordable as well, rather than doing the bigger European championships. So I think there are going to be changes, and it's going to affect everyone, that's for sure. Like, this whole pandemic has affected everyone, but things are waking up again, and I I suppose, like everyone, we look forward to our first or our next race that we can get to.
And one race that will be up pretty soon is the 24 Hours of the Nürburgring. So you're obviously going there to win it. Where do you think the
big one.
Where do you think the team is standing right now? Is it ready to make that challenge for the win, or do you still have some things you need to work through?
Well, yeah, I think obviously our performance was extremely strong last weekend, and I think that we've got all the same guys and crew and everyone involved from last year. So if we have a clean race, then we're like, our goal is to go there to win the thing. And after the last weekend's results, I think that's shown that it's possible. It's been possible to fight for the win the last few years, and I don't see why it would be any other. I don't see why there's any reason why we can't do exactly the same this year. So we've come so close the last few years, winning it again. So I'm hoping that 2020 can be the year that we can do it again.
Get that second win.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm pushing for that. I think there's 5 British drivers that have won it so far. So it'd be great to be the first one to try and win it twice. But of course, the thing is, so many things have to go perfect during the race, and we've seen it in other years that the fastest car didn't necessarily win, because obviously you need a bit of luck with everything going to plan, and you just need to stay out of trouble. Like last year was really, really sad and made me feel really sick because I felt like I let everyone down. I was in the car at the time, and I still believe that if that situation happened again, that I would have done the same move. But of course now I suppose I just have to be a little bit more cautious. Like I read it that the Toyota was allowing us past, and then suddenly came for a super late apex, which I never expected, and there was contact, and this lost us the lead of the race and actually put us out of the race. And so, I want a repeat of 2016 when we won it with the new car. If we can try and have the same result as that, and that'd be really good. In 2018, we just missed out on the win. We finished second, so we'll be back full guns blazing, ready to take on all the other brands and all the other teams to try and come out on top again.
With the new team. Fingers crossed.
With the new team, mate. Yeah, like you never know. We just need a perfectly clean race, and we'll be there at the end fighting for sure.
Thank you very much for your time and your insights.
It's been great catching up with you again.
British GT Championship kicks into life in just over a week's time, with a pair of 1 hour races at Oulton Park beginning a 9-round season, which is just one less than last year due to the cancellation of the annual flyaway to Spa. We'll discuss the full entry list for the season ahead in next week's preview podcast, but one standout announcement from the start of the year was the arrival into GT3 of 2C's Motorsport. The Bahraini squad is running 2 McLaren 720S GT3s, with the option to run a third, and one of the first drivers to be confirmed for the programme was Angus Fender. I was fortunate enough to grab some time with him in between tests and asked him how the deal came about. Hi Angus, welcome to the GT Report podcast. I just wanted to start off by asking how the deal with 2C's Motorsport came about.
Well, obviously they're a new team, so no one had heard of them before the year started, really, which is why the whole announcement thing caused such a big shockwave. But they came to me, I think it was in mid to late January. Obviously, with new everything, it was probably the best chance I'd got to have had a GT3 drive this year. So I couldn't really say no to it once everything in the contract was absolutely fine. It was kind of like a done decision, really.
What's your experience been of the McLaren so far? I'm guessing you must have had a lot more testing than you possibly expected at the start of the year.
Well, we had, I think it was 5 tests lined up when lockdown hit. Since then, we've managed to get 3 of them back, but I don't think we're going to have much time before the first round at Oulton now. So we did one day at Donington and then a back-to-back day at Silverstone last week. Well, 2 days at Silverstone last week. But it's all worthwhile experience, and having like McLaren pros there to compare yourself to has been really useful.
So how vital has it been to have those McLaren pros there too to help you get up to speed quicker on learning the car?
Yeah, it's been great. It's been great having them there, and obviously Dean, my teammates, he's experienced with mid-engine cars as well. For me, this is the first mid-engine car I've ever driven, and I'm ever going to race. So it's been a bit of a change of driving style, but I feel like I'm making some real progress with it now. So come on, we'll be competitive.
I was going to say, because obviously this won't be your GT3 debut. You raced the BMW M6 last year. How different is that to the McLaren?
Absolutely worlds apart. I mean, the concepts of extracting time are so different between the two cars. The M6 obviously have taken a big GT and stripped it out and pumped it up to make the GT3 car, whereas the McLaren is basically a road-going rocket ship they've had to water down to get to GT3 regs. So it just feels like a much more out-of-the-box thing, I suppose. So straight away it felt like a completely different beast.
Obviously, your BMW experience last year, you did 2 races, you got 2 podiums. That must give you a lot of confidence, even with the sort of change of concept of car. It must give you a lot of confidence going into Oulton Park.
Yeah, I mean, having any experience is better than none at all. So even if the surroundings and the car are different, it's good to know that I am capable in a GT3 car and I know the competition I'm against and what their various strengths and weaknesses are. So it'll be useful, definitely. And it's been also useful in helping Dean grasp what GT3 racing is like, because even though they're on the same track at the same time, it is a different concept of racing because you have so much more aero wash from the cars in front. So just those 2 races gave me invaluable information, really.
Now, thinking about traffic management, before you were in the GT3, you were racing a BMW M4 GT4. Does it give you a bit of an advantage when dealing with traffic that you were in the lower class that was being lapped and also in the faster car that was doing the lapping?
Yeah, it does help. I mean, any experience is useful, but it's interesting when you jump from a GT4 to GT3 and suddenly you're passing all the cars you're trying really hard to pass the weekend before and just breezing past them like nothing. So it was definitely new, and I haven't really had any kind of racing like that where I'd passed cars like they were standing still like I had at my first race at Branston in the GT3. But yeah, it does help. You kind of know a bit more about how they're going to react when you've been one of those cars. So that helps definitely when it comes to cutting through traffic.
And so talking about the competition, I mean, you look at the entry list and granted there are still some to be confirmed, but you're talking about a GT3 class that could be up to about 20 cars. What sort of mindset does that put you in, that the competition could be so big?
Well, it's going to be great. I think it's great for the series to have so many GT3 cars entered. I think this has been quite a big step in terms of the number of silver cars. I mean, last year you started the year with 2, and now you've got I think it's like 6 or 7. So having the extra competition can really only bring the best out of people. So we have to trust SRO to make sure all the cars are fair and to keep it all clean and coordinated. And then let's get down to racing, really. It'll be good to have them there.
And speaking of the racing, obviously it's a condensed calendar this year. We've only sort of dropped 1 race compared to 2019, but all those races are sort of happening in 3 months. Does that sort of change your approach at all, knowing that everything's coming so thick and fast?
My approach, not really. I've always kind of prioritised bringing the car back in one piece ahead of race results. That's kind of how I've always driven. Other people on the grid, maybe if I know to be a little more aggressive, they might have to try and tone their racing back a little bit, their racing instincts. But no, for me and Dean, our aim is exactly the same, and that won't change unless unforeseen circumstances seem to happen throughout the rest of the year.
And I think does that sort of make momentum more important, knowing that you maybe don't have as much time to reflect on a result as you might have done in a normal season, knowing that right, this is round 1 done, next week it's round 2. You can't really reflect on it for as long as you could have in the past.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you were to have a bad race, say I don't know, Snetterton last year, which I think was mid-May, I think you'd have say a month to get over it and recompose yourself for the next round. Whereas here you have the first 3 races in the space of 5 weeks. So getting off on the right foot is going to be so important, and just bringing home consistent finishes all through the year is basically what's going to win a championship, rather than going out, winning one race and then crashing off the next one. That's how you lose a championship really easily.
As you mentioned, racing alongside Dean McDonald this year. Granted, obviously you have a couple more GT3 races under your belt than Dean has, but what's the dynamic been like? So you're both at the sort of same stage of your career, both making that jump up to GT3. Does it make the dynamic any different? You're sort of learning off each other a lot more.
Yeah, I mean, we're the same age. We've been racing for a similar amount of time. He's been racing for a bit longer than I have in general, but in terms of car racing experience, we're kind of on a similar level. So it's good to compare us to each other, really, and it's been good learning off of Dean, and it's been good for him learning off of me in some regards. It's a little bit tricky with driver changes. He's probably a 4 or 5 inches shorter than I am, so pedals are getting adjusted. But no, we're two drivers who feel like we can really go and challenge for a championship this year, and that's what we intend to do.
Does it help that obviously you and Dean have that year of British GT experience? You sort of know the tracks, and a lot of your competition have come in either brand new to the series or from Europe, where they might not have that same knowledge of the British circuits. Does that sort of give you a bit of an initial boost?
Yeah, I think, of course, some of the AM drivers have had to back out, and they're the ones that would usually have more British racing experience than the ones coming in from Europe would have done. So circuits like Brands Hatch, where it's impossible to get any test days on the Grand Prix circuit, it's going to become really evidential who's had time there and who hasn't. So having done 2 seasons worth of racing there in both Ginetta Super Cup in 2018 and obviously last year in the M6, I think that'll really come in quite handy this year with A, the lack of testing, and B, the lack of time to learn it. So yeah, I do think that'll become quite evident.
And as well, you mentioned obviously some of the AMs not taking part this year, obviously the biggest being Graham Davidson and Johnny Adams, sort of the reigning GT3 champions. Does that sort of open up the championship a bit more, knowing that the reigning champions aren't returning?
I think it would have been just as good a chance for anyone anyway, because of course they're not in the same team this year, they're not in the same car. So even though both of those drivers aren't there, it takes 2 cars out of the equation, but the field's still just as strong. Barwell are going to come forward with a really good challenge as always, and maybe this year they might, now TF aren't there to spoil the party, they might have a shot at the title, but of course it's now our job to try and take them away from that, and we intend to do that.
And obviously you say the goal is to win the championship, but there's a few more McLarens on the grid this year. Is there a bit of sort of friendly competition between the McLaren teams to see who can become top dog out of all the 720S runners as well?
Yeah, there's loads on there. I think there was 1 last year, and now there's 5 or 6 at least. No, it'll be interesting to see what teams get the car right, what teams don't get the car quite as right, and what drivers really manage to grasp the car. Obviously, there are some with more experience than others, and even though we've done limited testing, we feel quite comfortable with where we are with the car at the moment, and the development's going well. Yeah, it'll be good to... It kind of helps us on the behalf of BOP, I suppose, because last year in the M4 and the M6, we only had 2 of those cars. So if both drivers did a good job in one race, chances are they'd get knocked with the BOP, where because there's a bigger spread, chances are it's going to be more consistently spread throughout the field, and that helps our corner a little bit with BOP. But we'll have to see how that goes when the rounds come. But we're aiming, worst case scenario, to be top McLaren this year, if not a title.
That's it for the first episode of the GT Report podcast. Thank you for listening, and we will be back next week with Joe and Jurek looking ahead at the upcoming British GT season starting at Alton Park. Until then, visit GT Report via gt.report for more news, interviews, race reports, and best of all, awesome photography.